Hello beautiful people, welcome back to the channel. Pots and Petals here, everything garden and allotment related. It is Saturday morning, it's about 9 o'clock and already it's about 16 degrees. So I think we're in for quite a warm one today. They're saying highs of about 21, 22, but it is quite windy. So I don't know if we're going to feel it, but as long as that sun is out, I should be able to start getting a bit of a tan. And I don't know if you can hear in the background, but the birds are singing their hearts out. It's what we call the morning chorus, and to us it sounds absolutely beautiful, but actually what they're doing is they're telling each other to stay off my patch because it is their mating and breeding season. Now I did buy a little bird feeder from B&M the other day. It's quite cute. I'll go and grab it in a minute, and I must fill that up and find a new little home for that. But when I first came down this morning, the blackbird was up in the tree and it was really going for it, and right now I can hear the little robin doing exactly the same thing. Now I did pop down here on Monday. I just didn't do any filming. Now I'm not a big drinker, but we went out on the Saturday night into town, and I tell you what, that done me in for a couple of days. All day Sunday I was out of action, and even on the Monday I was still feeling a little bit rough, but I did manage to come down and do a little bit of planting up. So we had all of those plants in the poly house, so I've transferred a lot of those into the new sort of nature seating area that we've been doing around the back of the shed. So I'll go and show you what I've been doing around there a little bit later on. And then this morning I popped to a shop. It's called B&Q. It's like a big DIY store. They sell DIY bits, but also some plants. I've just brought a few little plants that we can plant up in there a little bit later on, just to get some flowers going over in that corner, and I'll take you through those. And I did buy a few cheeky tomatoes as well. I mean, at home I just do not have much space at the moment to be growing many things from seeds, such as my tomatoes and my chili plants. So what I do tend to do is we have what's called a car boot sale. So it's basically where people grow them at home and then they sell them on at this sort of little market. So you normally get them really cheap, anywhere between 50p to £1 for one plant, and you get quite a good variety. So that's something that I must do over the next couple of weeks, to go and grab some of my chili plants and also some of my tomato plants. Now I can't believe we are already in April, and April means that we can sow so many seeds. So I'm going to take you through some of the seeds that I'll be sowing in April, and over today and tomorrow we're going to be doing lots of sowing. So keep your eye out for my little list. But I mean, up until May, we can still get frost down here. So do go careful with some of the plants that you are sowing or planting out. Like my tomatoes, they will be coming home with me today, just so that it's a little bit easier to transfer them from outside to inside, because I do live quite away from the allotment, so it wouldn't be too handy to keep them down here. So yeah, they'll be coming home. And then I popped into the poly house, and it looks like one of my tray of seedlings, which had all my flowers in, seemed to have been eaten by the slugs and the snails. Now the thing is, the bench is probably a good metre and a half off the ground, so I have no idea how the slugs and snails are getting up there. So I really must have a little hunt for those and sort those out. There's a few little pots that have survived and seem to be doing okay, so I'm going to pull those out and hopefully they will still grow on. And I did leave my brassicas and my onions out of the poly house because it was getting a little bit too hot in there for them. So now is a really good time just to take check of what you've got in your poly house and what actually needs to be in there. So I kept them out and they're looking a lot healthier now. So I'll take you through some of those, because it's probably about time that we start potting them up into their own pots. We have got all sorts going on today. I'll take you through a list of what I'm going to be sowing in April. We're going to do some sowings. We're going to plant out some of the plants that I've bought. And yeah, you know the score. There'll be lots of other little bits and bobs along the way. So I'm going to make myself a quick cup of coffee, have a little chill out, listen to the birds, and then we better start cracking on. Now you're going to have to excuse the squintiness today because it's a little bit bright, but just look how cute this little guy is. So this is a little beach hut bird feeder, and I've just filled it up with some pellets, but you could suet pellets, but you could put some peanuts in here as well. And I am just going to pop this just above the new little raised bed that we made in the pear tree The birds are going to absolutely love this. I mean, it won't be too long before they're going to have berries, lots of insects and all sorts to feed on, but this will just see them over for the time being. So we're just going to hang this little guy up over in the pear tree. So here I've got one of my apple trees. I've got two. This is a Bramley apple, so this is a cooking variety. And then just behind me, we have got the Fiesta, and that is an eating apple. Now we get fruits on these every single year, but the only problem is we suffer with something called codling moth. Now it's not the moth itself that causes the harm, it's the little grubs, the little caterpillars that hatch from their eggs. So at this time of year, you want to be hanging up some of these pheromone traps if this is something that you do struggle with. So once the eggs have hatched and the larvae are out, they find their way to the fruit and then they start to bore holes that goes deep inside, and sometimes it can make your fruit inedible. So the idea today is we're going to set some of these pheromone traps, and this is going to attract some of the codling moth into the trap. It's going to get stuck in there before it's able to lay its eggs anywhere near our fruit. Now for a tree this size, I would say maybe one, but I'm going to put two in here just to be extra careful, and then I'm going to hang another one over in the smaller tree over there, and hopefully we will get less damage on some of our fruit. So it's the first year I've tried this, so we're going to give it a go and I'll let you know how we get on. So this is the area that we've been planting up over the last few weekends with some of the bits and pieces that we looked after throughout the winter. So we've got some climbing roses, we've got buddleia, we've got the little apple tree, hydrangea, spirea. Honestly, we've got all sorts, and even some bamboo down at the back. But on Monday, what I'd done was I just planted out some of the things that we still had. So we had some foxgloves, so I've got a few of those in here. We've got the achillea. I split a big clump of that up and I've planted that throughout. But we've also got quite a few astilbe in here as well. But as you can see, there is still plenty of space to get some planting. So that is what I'd done down in B&Q today. I've got a few little plants that we're going to pop up. So I'll take you through some of those right now. So here we have got a geum, and this is called Ladystroden, and it is a yellow variety geum, and these can come in reds, yellows, but also oranges. I believe there's one called tangerine, which is absolutely beautiful. And I did sow a few seeds of these probably about a month ago, but nothing seems to have come up. But I do know that that polyhouse did get quite warm at one point, and I might not have got down here quick enough to give them a water. So they might have germinated and died, but not to worry, there is always next year. So if you're going for a cottage style garden, these are great. They give off these beautiful tall flower spikes which are covered in these rose type looking flowers, and they just dangle around and blow around in the wind, and the pollinators absolutely adore these. So I've got 3 of these, as I did with all of the plants that I'm planting today. Now in garden design, they do say to try and plant in odd numbers and try and spread them around so it looks quite natural. Now if you line them all up, it's going to look quite regimented. So what we'll do is we'll dot them out throughout the flower border. So we'll get these in the ground, and I'll show you a couple of the other flowers that I've got as well. So this here is a Lickness, also known as a red campion. I'm not too sure where the red comes from because the flowers are sort of fuchsia pink, bright pink, and the leaves, they're sort of furry. They give off this sort of silvery tone. Again, great if you're going for a cottage style garden. These can grow up to 1 metre, and as with the geum, they're both very hardy and can tolerate a little bit of shade, but they do prefer quite a bit of sun. And the other great thing about this plant is that they will self-seed all over the place. So you should have plenty of plants that you can dig up and spread around the garden for next year. So this looks a little bit overcrowded, so it might be that we can split some of these up and plant them out. So we'll get these out into the garden as well. Next up, we have got the lupins. Now these can come in a variety of colours. Again, they're very hardy. They can grow up to sort of 60 to 1 metre tall, 60 centimetres to 1 metre tall. So I don't know if I'm going to have room to plant all 6 of these out, but we'll certainly give it a go. Now they don't look great, but they have got one hell of a root system going on. So I am hoping that once we get them into the ground, they should really start to take off. And yeah, they are stunning flowers, and the bees and the pollinators absolutely adore these as well as the other plants that I've got. So we've got quite a few flowers that we're going to plant up today, and then finally I have got a grass. I'll show you that as well. Here we have got a grass. Now, I'm not too sure on the variety. This has come from my nan's garden. If you remember, she's having a little bit of a sort out at the moment. Now, this does spread like wildfire, so I'm going to put this towards the front of the border, and it might be that I need to dig some of it up. But it has these little flower spikes that come up later in the year, and I just love that they have this sort of evergreen green, but also the cream you can see running through that as well with the variegation. So we'll see if we've got some room for some of this. If not, we have got around the pond where we could plant some of this up as well, but I didn't want it going into the brown bin. I like to find room for plants no matter what, so we will definitely find somewhere to stick some of this. Now, as Monty Don says, place twice, even 3 or 4 times, but you only want to plant them once. So do have a little play around. Now, I've already got quite a lot already planted out, so I'm limited as to where these can go. But I want them to flow through the border so that your eyes sort of follow the same sort of plants, same as what I've done with the foxgloves and the astilbe. Now, the grass, I'm sort of wanting in areas where I'm not thinking that I'm going to put any flowers in. So we've got the bit just at the back, just over there. Then we've got a clump, which you might be able to see just on my far right over there. But I think I'm quite happy with where those are. I might just stick this Lickness a little bit further back over here and bring the geum up. Swap these around a little bit. Now I think the geum's going to let in a little bit more light over here. And although these grow quite tall, I don't mind them being towards the front of the border. And then we've just got little pockets of grass sort of dotted around. So I think we're going to go with that. Right, let's now start digging some holes. Now you're probably wondering why I haven't planted any vegetables out the back here. And that is because when I first took on this plot, round here was full of plastic. Loads of tiny little bits of sort of foily type stuff in the ground. And I just didn't fancy planting anything that I was going to eat down in this bed. And not only that, but a few years ago, there were some idiots, is probably the polite term to use, that came onto the plot and set a few sheds on fire, including mine. So down here we've got all sorts of stuff that was in my shed that's got set on fire, melted down, and I do find the odd bits sort of in the soil down here. So yeah, I don't really fancy planting out anything that I'm going to be eating down in this corner. We've got loads of stinging nettles that were growing in here. I thought I'd got most of the roots out, but obviously not. We'll just have to keep an eye on some of that and just dig it up as and when we see it. When you're planting these, you want to give them a real good firming, and then after we've got these all planted out, we can give them a real good water as well, just to settle that soil around their roots. Now I am growing on a little bit of a slope here, so you just have to be a bit careful when digging your holes to make sure they're not too much on the wonk. And I've also put a couple of the branches that I had sort of dotted around just to create a little bit of a border edge to help with some of this soil if it does start to fall down a bit like it is here. And then we'll probably add to this. I've got loads of logs and bits and pieces that I could use, so we'll see how we get on. So let's run through some of the seeds that we're going to be sowing in April. Now, I don't know if we're going to get round to sowing some seeds today, but not to worry. We're going to be down here on the plot tomorrow and we'll get plenty of these sown. So let's start off with some of the alliums. As you know, we've already got some onion sets out in the bed, which we planted some in autumn, but we had to plant some more in the springtime because a few of them disappeared. But these are spring onions. They're a lot smaller. I believe that you call them scallions in the US and Canada, but these are great for salads and stir fries. And we've got a few varieties here and some which turn that beautiful blush red down at the bottom. So we can start thinking about getting these in. Now, we could have planted some of these in March, but it was a little bit cold and a little bit wet. But we've got another one here, and these are spring onions, but they do just get a little bit bigger towards the bottom. So they're somewhere between a spring onion and a normal onion. And as you can see, we've got those beautiful pinks as well as these whites. So they should do quite well in some of the beds. And then finally, we have got some of the leeks. Now, I grow these a little bit differently to how I grow the spring onions. I start them off in a pot, but I will take you through that probably tomorrow as to how I grow these leeks. But we've got a Leon here, prize taker. We've got the spring bulbous mix. We've got Snow Queen F1. We've got North Holland Blood Red, which is that red, and then we have Katana as well. So we've got quite a few varieties of different alliums to get out. Next up, we've got some of the root vegetables. So we'll start off with the parsnips. Now, I'll probably sow these towards the end of the month, the end of April, beginning of May, and I sow these very thinly. So when we do come out to planting these parsnips, I'll definitely bring you along as well. Then also carrots. Now, we've already done a few rows of carrots, but they don't seem to be germinating, so I must get a few more of these sown over the next few days. But we've got loads of varieties of these. If you know me, they are my favourite vegetable, and each different variety are great for different things. So you've got the great ones for eating raw. I'd say Norfolk 1, that is a new one for me, but they're quite thin, small looking carrots. The Amsterdam Solo 2, again, great for eating raw and putting into your salads. And then we've got the more chunkier ones. So we've got the Royal Chantenay, and then this new one, Oxheart, and they're much chunkier. So I'd probably use these for a good stew. Somewhere where you're going to really cook it down, where it can soak up all of those beautiful juices. But yeah, they are definitely one of my favourite vegetables. Then we've got some radishes. Now, we did sow a few of these in the poly house, but I think it's getting a little bit too hot in there. But that's not to worry, because if these do start to bolt, then you can eat the pods after they're flowered. They're a little bit spicy, and I believe in Germany they do pickle them. But yeah, I must get some of these out in the normal beds. What you must do with radishes is don't sow too many at once, because you will be inundated with them. So it's always good to just do a few little sowings every couple of weeks. And then finally, we have got the beetroot. So Bolt Hardy, that is a good standard one. We've got a few different varieties. I think I've got Detroit 2 as well. And these are beautiful. You can roast these, you can pickle them, and you can even grate them raw into a salad as well. So we'll definitely get some of these sown either today or tomorrow. Here we have got some of the brassicas left to sow. So we've already sown some cabbages and some Brussels sprouts, which are coming along lovely. But I think I just need to start potting them up over the next few days. But here we have got a kale called Black Magic, and these are very hardy. These will be great for when it comes to autumn, winter, and the Christmas dinner. And we've also got a cauliflower. Now, I try these every single year, but I've never been able to get the beautiful white floret in the middle. They always seem to just turn very green and then they start to bolt. So we'll try them again this year. So fingers crossed we'll be able to get one of those. But I love these, especially come winter when you haven't got much going on in the garden. Whilst we're going through the greens, we have still got some chard left to sow. Now, these are white silver too, but you can get some beautiful colours. You can get some pink ones, red ones, yellow, purple, all sorts of beautiful colours. So they do make a beautiful plant, not only to eat, but also to look at. And you can wilt the leaves down, but you can also roast some of these stems when they get a little bit thicker, depending on when you start to harvest your chard. And then we've also got a lettuce. Now, I do like to go for a really nice ball lettuce, because I find the problem is some of the slugs really do get in there, and the last thing I want is slugs in my salad. We give them a good wash, but yeah, it's always a good idea to soak them in some salty water before you start to serve them up. So we'll give those a go, but I'll probably sow these into some module trays first of all before I start thinking about putting them in the garden, because the slugs and the snails absolutely love them. And then we mustn't forget the pea. So we have sown some early peas already, where I made that little trellis using some of the branches that I cut back from the pear tree, but they don't seem to have popped up just yet. So whether a little mice or something has found them and eaten them, I'm not too sure. So we might have to do another little sowing, but these are much taller than the ones that I've already planted, so I will need to make a new frame. But these are a main crop. They're called rondo. But what I find with peas is that you need hundreds of plants if you were to take them home. I find these are a little snack whilst I'm down here on the plot. But they're main crop, so they should do well even in the sun, because I do find that peas don't like the sunlight too much. So if you've got a shady spot, I would probably think about popping some peas in there. We've got some heat-loving plants here. So first of all, tomatoes. It's not too late to sow them. So if you do get a few of these sown over the next week or so, you're going to have tomatoes lasting well into September, October, as long as we don't get any frost. Now, shimmer is my favourite tomato. I haven't sown any this year. I might take these home with me and sow a couple of plants. But yeah, you don't want to be leaving these out in the cold. Same with the cucumbers. You can sow these now and keep them indoors and look after them, and later in the year you can direct sow these and these will soon catch up. So I'll probably wait until the end of the month, keep an eye on the forecast, and as long as there's no frost due, then we can think about sowing these and keeping them in the polyhouse, because they do really like the warmth. Now some of these are sown, can grow indoors and outdoors. As you can see, the Burpless Tasty is a good one for both in and out, and then we've got Nimrod F1, which is a tasty thin-skinned variety. Both of these are quite small, and I find that the smaller varieties you just get a lot more yield compared to the really long ones that you can get, such as Telegraph Pole. But yeah, these are some of the heat-loving plants I'd probably be sowing now, but there are still plenty to come May, so keep your eyes out for the May video. So they were all the vegetables, but you know me, I do love a flower. So down here we've got a few. I'll probably be saving a lot of the sunflowers and cosmos until May, so I definitely know that the frost is gone. But we have got Sweet William down here. This is a biennial, so this year it will grow all of its green growth, and then next year is when it will flower. Great for a cottage garden, and they do smell absolutely beautiful, and the bees absolutely love them. And then we have got a few packets of the zinnia. So I've got this beautiful purple Prince one, and then I've got a mixed colour over here, and these are great for in the garden as well. But again, they're not too much of a fan of the frost, so just do keep an eye out on the weather forecast. But yeah, we'll get some of these sown into some module trays, and then hopefully be able to plant them out in some of the flower areas later on in the year. And then one plant that I've never been able to grow is a straw flower, so we're going to give them a go this year as well. Again, not a huge fan of the frost, so we'll see what the weather forecast is like, but we'll pop these into some modular trays as well and hopefully get them into the flower gardens. So along with all the flowers that we've already got, we should have lots of beautiful colour. You can't really see what these are, but these are gourds, and they can be turned into bottles once they've been dried out. Now, I don't sow my pumpkins and squash until sort of May time, but I am conscious that these are quite tropical plants, so they probably need a little bit longer to really get going. So we'll try a couple of these out. We've got 12 seeds in total, so I'll probably sow 3 or 4 of them this month in the hope that they do well, and if not, we can try them a little bit later in the year. But I want to see whether I'm able to grow some of my own bottles. So down here, these are the tomatoes that I bought today. As I say, I haven't really got much room at home to be growing these on, which is a bit of a shame. But we've got Alicante, Summerlast, Totem. We have got all sorts down here. But when it comes to planting these out, I'll take you through all the different varieties I've got, because I'm pretty sure I'll be buying some more as well. And then these are all of the brassicas and some of the onions that we started from seed, which are doing really well. So we've got some of the cabbage down here. We have got some broccoli. We've got the onions, which I think are Bedfordshire Champion, and then we've also got some of the sprouts. But some of those sprouts have either been eaten by some slugs or the pigeons have got to them. But it's a bit strange how they haven't got to any of these brassicas along here. So they're definitely getting big enough now to start potting them up into their own pot. So we'll probably get round to doing that tomorrow. But yeah, they are looking really good. So that is all we've got time for today, folks. It didn't get quite as sunny as what I thought it was going to today. I mean, it is still quite bright and quite squinty, but that wind earlier was really bad. It's calmed down a little bit now, but when I was filming the pheromone traps and the trees, you guys were flying all over the place. So I really must think about getting a bit more of a sturdy tripod for when I'm filming down here. But tomorrow, when we're down here, we have got lots that we really must actually start cracking on with. We've got all of those seeds that we need to start sowing. I definitely want to get some beetroot into the ground, some spring onions, and try some more carrots. I'm pretty sure there'll be some more as well. We've got the brassicas, which have already sort of come up, and we've got the little seedlings, but they're getting quite big. So I want to pop them into their own little pots so that they can bulk up before we start popping them into the ground. I've got the blueberry that we got sent, was it last weekend? I still haven't planted that. I've got some ericaceous compost, so we need to get that planted into the fruit cage, and we've still got a bit more rhubarb to be harvesting. I mean, we will be harvesting that every 2 to 3 weeks up until July now. So yeah, tomorrow is going to be do. But in the meantime, guys, I hope you have a lovely evening, and I'll see you guys back down here for another adventure down on the plot. So have a lovely night, guys, and I'll see you tomorrow. See you later. Bye bye.